Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown, and we're very happy you have tuned in tonight. We have a lot going on. We'll get into plenty of hockey talk as the Penguins split a weekend worth of games, losing yesterday, winning today, and the trade deadline is just about a week away. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers and what will be an interesting week for them as well. And here are your panelists. Left to right, we have Paul Zeise from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and 93.7 The Fan, The Paul Zeise Show. In the middle is Josh Yohe, outstanding beat writer for The Athletic on the Penguins, and Jason Mackey, who does great work for the Post-Gazette covering the Penguins as well. And as I said, we'll have more Penguin stuff coming up a bit later. But first, let's talk about two big items. #1, Antonio Brown meeting with Art Rooney II after he first turned him down and then decided, oh, yeah, I better do this. And #2, Le'Veon Bell. But first, Paul, let's talk about AB versus Rooney in this meeting, this summit in Florida. What do you expect out of it, Paul Zeise?
Nothing. I mean, I think it's going to be a total sham, really. I mean, the bottom line is he doesn't want to be here. And I think if you got to catch any of his act on Twitter yesterday, if there was anything left of the bridges that he's already burned, he just torched them, especially with his quarterback. So I think they'll just basically say, okay, you know, let's just try and get out of this respectfully, save face, we'll trade you, goodbye.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that Art Rooney is even going to Florida to have this meeting. I can't imagine the Steelers are the least bit interested in having this human being on their football team anymore. Obviously, they would like to trade him, I think, for whatever they can get at this point. But it's just interesting to me. I guess I give Art credit for trying to be the bigger man, even though he's been ignored reportedly for about a month now. He's going to go to Florida on AB's turf and talk with him. That's great. But what's Art even going to say? Is he going to say, AB, like, what's going on, pal? Is your agent asking you to behave like this? I mean, he has a lot of questions I guess he could ask, but I can't see that this is going to unite these two in any fashion.
On one level, I can kind of see this working. Like if AB has some thoughts about how he's been treated or not appreciated or whatever, I think Art Rooney II can maybe assuage some of those. I think where it breaks down for me and where I agree with you guys and don't see this working whatsoever is it seems like the root of AB's issue is Ben Roethlisberger and how he behaves. That's not going to change. Art's not going to sit there and say that Ben's going to be gone or something like that. I just don't think Art Rooney II can offer a solution to Antonio Brown that would remedy this.
But he's minimized a lot of what's gone on over the years, which tells me that he still is interested. And if you hear some of the reports out here, Paul, 5th round pick for Antonio Brown, 4th round. I mean, come on. He's one of the most valuable production wide receivers in the game. If the Steelers can't get anything better than that, do you think they would welcome him back? And what would change if he did come back?
I think they would be really dumb to welcome him back. And I think, I've used it a few times, that Buddy Ryan line when he traded Ernest Jackson all those years ago, and they said about what his worth would be. And Buddy Ryan said, I'd trade him for a 6-pack, and it doesn't even have to be cold. That, to me, is how you should approach Antonio Brown. It's over. This is not going to work. And the other part of it is, even if you have a million summits and him and Ben Roethlisberger go on vacation together and spend a week and they come back, what's going to happen the first time that, Ben Roethlisberger throws the ball to Juju Smith-Schuster 6 times and Antonio Brown doesn't get his touches? You can't trust the guy. That's why it's just, you got to move on. Get what you can get for him and move on.
Now, Bob, if AB does show up to training camp, how many KDKA cameras do we think would be in Latrobe?
Well, a lot. And the big question is how he would arrive. I'd be more interested this year. It won't be a helicopter. You never know.
It could be a police escort, only this time it would probably have a different kind of meeting.
100 miles per hour, right?
Yeah,
he can't drive himself, that's for sure, because he probably just lost his license.
Doesn't even show up at court, I know.
You can't go more than 5 on Route 30.
Right, but you can try. Anyway, he's tried that on McKnight Road, which is worse. Anyway, now let's talk about the other topic, and that's Le'Veon Bell, because he's not been the distraction that Antonio Brown has been. But Jason Mackey, when you look at a guy like this, he decided to sit out a whole season on a franchise tag. This is kind of uncharted territory for a team to go through. The Steelers are now reportedly interested in giving him a transition tag, which would cost them compensation in 2020, which at this point would be a 3rd round pick. So what is the best course of action for the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell?
Well, I'm glad I understand this now, Pomp. Thank you for explaining this exactly how exactly this works off the air, but I would not do it. I just wouldn't. I think they should be through with Le'Veon Bell, move on. James Conner has been fine. Let's say they do move ahead and play this year on a $9.5 million tag or whatever it is, and Le'Veon Bell caves. Is that money worth it to be, do you spend that on a running back, or would you rather appropriate that elsewhere? And I'd rather use it on a middle linebacker or a defensive back or a wide receiver. They have a lot of other stuff with their team they can sort of address with that money. I'd rather not have Le'Veon Bell.
Go ahead, Josh.
I've almost forgotten about Lev Bell, given the AB stuff during the last couple of months. In all seriousness, Bell doesn't look so bad now, I guess. I've never viewed Bell as a bad person or a bad apple, like clearly the way Antonio Brown is behaving right now. But really, when you look at the landscape of the NFL, I think this past season, more than any other, shows you don't need a star running back. Sure, he's a great player, he helps, but you really don't need to spend that much money on that position. It has been devalued. I really believe that. So I don't think he's a horrible person. I think he's been a little greedy and hasn't handled the situation real well. But if I'm the Steelers, it's clearly time to move on. He doesn't want to be there. And Brown and Bell have both been so toxic. I just don't think it's helping them win football games.
I just think the thing about the transition tag is they're hoping that they can work out a deal and get a trade, and it gives them the time basically for Le'Veon Bell and his agent to go out and work a trade. But the thing is, he would have to sign it in order for them to be able to trade him. At least if they don't do anything, they would get a third-round pick for him. My question, if I was sitting in with the Steelers, is how much more than a third-round pick do you realistically think you're going to get for Le'Veon Bell? And if it's not that much more, why are you giving yourself this headache and having to go through all this nonsense again? Just move on.
Yeah, that's a good point. You wonder how much Bell has cost himself. The market for running backs will be determined by the market, not for running backs necessarily, and it's likely not to get anywhere near what he wants. He wants to be paid as a running back and a receiver. That's just not going to happen. All right. Now let's talk about something that's going to happen. It's time to talk about big trades. And you see right now, number one Cochran, they're giving you an extra $1,000 over Kelly Blue Book value for your trade. It's part of their Auto Showstopper event, where you also get savings up to $12,560 and leases from $129 a month. The savings go on and on, but the Auto Showstopper event ends February 28. Make sure you get there. Check out all number one Cochran locations or Cochran.com. Hockey talk next. The number one Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by number one Cochran. Go one better. And by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.